speaker. And now Chris Ritchie presents the Invisible Medal, Leading with a Higher Purpose.
All right. Thank you very much, Emery, for that introduction, and Hope, thank you for what you and Phil always do for with this Eagle Cast. And I want to also thank it looks like there's about 36 folks or so who've logged in. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Like Hope said, this is a free service that's provided by her department, Auburn University. And I know I've grown and been enriched every single time I've participated in these, whether as a speaker, but especially as an audience member. So we're going to be a little bit interactive today. So I am hoping that we've got the chat windows wide open for everybody to answer and participate in. We'll be asking some questions as we go throughout about the next 45 minutes with one another. And I do look forward to your questions at the end. And so here's the very first opportunity to put something in the chat window. What are you passionate about? When you woke up this morning, what entered your mind and just you thought, I can't wait to do whatever, fill in the blank. And I'd love to see what some of your responses are in the chat window. So you're going to have to be a little bit interactive today, and you'll get a lot more out of this, I promise. But passion is something that it is so powerful. And as Oprah Winfrey here says, passion is energy. And when you feel the power that comes from focusing on things that excite you, that kind of drives you. I like to say that passion excites you, right? But if we can somehow connect that passion, the things that excite us the most, to some type of a purpose, that's where power really comes into play. And Viktor Frankl stated it best, a Holocaust survivor, and many years later, he wrote that when you know your why, you can endure any how. In other words, he's talking about purpose. And when you've identified your purpose, and if you can connect a passion to a purpose, there's nothing that you won't go through in order to achieve it. And so I want to start with this quote that's been actually several people have been attributed to this particular quote. Probably the most famous of them all is Mark Twain. And it's a simple statement. The two most important days in a person's life is the day they are born and the day they discover why. So everybody here today in Zoom land, congratulations, you're halfway there at least, or you wouldn't be here quite obviously. But the more important question is, have you discovered your why? What is your purpose? And I would like to introduce myself by basically telling you when I discovered my purpose. And it was when I was 12 years old. And it all starts with this gentleman right here. This is Colonel Eugene Blair Conrad. He was my grandfather. And this picture was taken 3 years after he was liberated from a Japanese prisoner of war camp. Now, I remember growing up, spending time at their beach house in Destin, Florida, my grandparents, and just loved everything about this man, his faith, his service to our country, his love of family. He would always tell me, son, always be prepared for the worst, but hope for the best. And little things like that that just stuck with me. Even when he said, it doesn't matter what you do in this life, whatever your job is, be the best that you could possibly be at that job. So I just grew up admiring this person who mentored me in my youth. And then at the age of 12, I had the privilege to go to Fort Rucker and observe a change of command ceremony. Now, I was with my grandfather, who was in civilian clothes because he was retired, but I noticed several generals walking by and saluting my grandpa. And I asked my uncle, why are they saluting grandpa? And he just looked at me and said, son, your grandpa's a hero. That's why. And that got me to learning a little bit more about the person who I just admired as a human. And then I learned the things that he did while he served our country. He was in the Philippines when the Japanese attacked both Pearl Harbor and the Philippines simultaneously. His company commander was killed instantly, so he assumed command of the company. And the things that he did over the next couple of months to help his soldiers survive on incredible odds, then being injured and surviving the Bataan Death March and helping his soldiers survive through that atrocity, and then 3.5 years as a prisoner of war, and the things that he did to help people not lose hope that there was going to be a better tomorrow. He was 50 miles away from Hiroshima when the atomic bomb was dropped at Camp Rokoroshi, is where he was a POW. So anyway, 12 years old, y'all, I learned my purpose. I wanted to be like grandpa. Now, growing up in Texas was really something for me. If anybody out there grew up in Texas, just type Texas, and I'll guarantee there's going to be at least one or two are from Texas. I promise you, because there always is in every crowd. And growing up in Texas, I remember a trip to a solemn place that taught me about service and sacrifice and believing in something bigger than yourself. And what I'm talking about here is the Alamo. And that had a major impact on my youth. And then my parents, both of whom had gone to Auburn, took me to the Cotton Bowl in 1986. I got to see with my own eyes Bo Jackson run 74 yards down the field. And just prior to the game, seeing the Spirit March for the very first time and just how moved I was by the band and the majorettes and cheerleaders and just all this energy. So my mind was made up, honestly. I was going to go to Auburn, and that's what I did. Came to Auburn in 1988. Wanted to serve my country, like I said, so I was in the Navy ROTC program. Graduated in 1992, was commissioned 30 years and 3 days. My wife says, don't forget those 3 extra days. So 30 years and 3 days I was on active duty. And this is me when I retired in May of 2022. And what I really love about this picture is what I'm wearing on my left lapel. And that was my grandfather's rank insignia that he wore when he retired after serving for 32 years. So that was my story. I found purpose, wanted to go to Auburn, became a part of that family, served my country, was managed to be retired for 10 weeks. And now here I am, very fortunate to be working at Auburn University with an incredible team here with human resource development. Now, I love this picture here because it's interesting how full circle things can become. If somebody had gone back 37 years and shown me this picture and said, look, you are going to go to Auburn, you are going to serve your country, you're going to marry somebody who grew up in Auburn, and you're going to have a daughter who not only goes to Auburn, but is going to be a member of that Auburn University marching band, like what you just saw march in front of you, I would have thought, wow, I just really won the lottery. And it's interesting how life can really uh, bring you around to full circle. And I have another daughter who's starting at Auburn in the fall. And so I'm a very proud dad. Now, the reason I start my talks that way is to demonstrate to you the power of reflection. And you don't dwell on these things, you don't think about them unless you force yourself to really reflect. And the philosopher John Dewey really said it best that we don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on that experience. And when we reflect and we give ourselves that time to really get in tune with ourselves, our inner core, our souls, we'll reveal things about ourselves that we don't necessarily know. And for me, my passion is people, specifically leading people. And I have a purpose which is twofold. I'd love for you all to help me on this. For every human to achieve their potential, and for everyone to feel the joy of helping others achieve their potential. And I'm going to share this through a story that I call the invisible medal. But I would like to pause right before we begin, maybe just 2 minutes. I shared my story. I'd like for you to think about your story. What events or people inspired you to become the person that you are or hope to be? And have you discovered your purpose? We'll just pause. You don't have to answer, but if you do, I'd love to see what your thoughts are in the chat window. A lot of stuff is coming in. Thank you all very much. But I'll be quiet for about a minute or two while you think about this reflection question and type it in the chat window or just write it down for yourself. And I'll be back in a minute or two. Mm. All right, I'll pick it back up. I really appreciate the transparency and honesty in some of these comments. And The more you think about these things, the more you're definitely going to reflect and learn from yourself. That's where great learning comes from. And I knew there's going to be some people from Texas. There always is. All right, so let's jump into really a question to ponder as we go through the rest of our talk today. And it's this right here, success. Are we too consumed with success? I mean, think about it. Our society at a young age tells us if we are average, below average, or above average, and that's with academics. In sports, we're told, are we going to be the starter or are we going to be the bench warmer? I mean, we are sending ourselves messages about the value that our society places on success. Now, I'm not saying success is bad. Clearly, it's very important, but maybe are we too consumed with it? And is there something more valuable than success? And I believe the answer is yes. And bear with me in a few more slides. I'll show you exactly what I think is more important than success. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte famously said that a soldier will fight long and hard for a bit of colored ribbon. Now, during his campaigns, he noticed that there were soldiers, they would do anything just to be recognized, just to be given that little bit of success, which in his time was a ribbon that they would put right here over their left chest. And I want you to hold on to this theme with me for a little bit as I talk about my military service. This is a picture of Chesty Puller, who is the most decorated Marine in Marine Corps history. He earned 5 Navy Crosses during his military service. That's just one step below the Medal of Honor, so pretty significant. Now, in the military, and if anybody online is in the military, please just type in your branch of service on the chat window. I'd appreciate that. But anybody who is a veteran, they know it's competitive. It is incredibly competitive. And our bio is worn right here on our chest. All right, Air Force, Navy, waiting for some Marines out there. But it's worn right here. I mean, everybody sees it. So imagine if we walked around Auburn University and as you would meet people, their bio is right here, their resume, and you just do a quick glance and you can learn everything about this person's service at Auburn University and anywhere else. That's how it is in the military, whether you've been combat decorated, meritoriously decorated, or where you have been deployed to and things of that nature. So I remember vividly, I was at Auburn about to graduate and get commissioned, and this thing called Desert Storm erupted. And of course, we were all excited, wanting to be a part of it. But my path took me to the basic school for military training. And 6 months of that, I was reporting to my very first duty station. Now, one thing that happens in the military, if you are on active duty and our nation is at war, everybody is given the the national service ribbon for military service while on that during a time of war. So I did not necessarily earn this National Defense Service ribbon that I was given. None of us really had, but I was happy to have something on my chest. Okay, maybe I can be a leader worth following. And I remember checking into my first duty station. This cartoon was me. I was this guy on the left, a brand new second lieutenant. And there was this crusty gunnery sergeant that literally said this to me, sir, that looks like a pizza stain on your shirt, which was a cartoon going around the military at the time. And they were telling us a message. Look, I see that you're wearing something, but you didn't really earn it. So I realized at a very young age, I had a ways to go really to become that leader worth following. Well, time goes on, and then September 11th happens. I paused for a second there because I'll bet you everybody online knows exactly where you were on 9/11. It's just something that's seared into our minds that we won't ever forget. And for me, I was a company commander for a long-range radar organization, and I was giving a presentation to the brand new 3-star general for 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force. And I remember his aide came up, whispered something, and then he just disappeared. I mean, was gone. He didn't say thank you. He didn't shake my hand. He just said nothing. He just disappeared. And I thought that was so rude, right? And then I walked into our building, and I saw a large group of Marines huddled around a television. And I asked somebody, what's going on, Marines? And they said, sir, somebody just flew a plane into the World Trade Center. And honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was how could somebody fly in a small plane like a Cessna fly into such a large building, right? And at that exact moment, I watched plane number two strike the second tower. And at that moment, we all knew we were under attack, basically. And so we stood there dumbfounded, angry, mad, wanting to do something, but we didn't know what we could do. And then we thought, geez, we can power up our radar right here and do something. So that's what we did. It's a 300 nautical mile range. We were at Cherry Point, North Carolina. We could see up to DC, sort of, but we didn't know. We just did whatever we could. And next thing you know, we're talking to our admin chain of command was gone. We were talking to the Southeast Air Defense Sector. We overheard somebody on a hot mic somewhere talking to Air Force One, and we just realized, my goodness, we're at war. We're under attack. And it was the most surreal feeling to eventually see as our radar would sweep that there was no air tracks whatsoever. Nothing was flying at all. Day that changed the world, really. And then I remember just a couple of months after this, I found myself on a pre-deployment site survey somewhere in the Middle East that was classified, and then came back and was told I was going to be the company commander for this deployment, which was a unique deployment because it called for 75% of our company to be foreign from other organizations that weren't even a part of our own. So I was about to deploy with people who I had never met before. And I remember how surreal the feeling was, because there was only four of us that even knew where we were going or what our mission was, even though we had 135 Marines that were going with us. And I will never forget, it was about 8 p.m. 1 week before we were to deploy, and I was 2 Marines short of what we needed for our security platoon. So our mission called for providing our own internal security, where the host nation was providing the external security, which is kind of funny because they were always looking at us, which is a little bit weird. But so it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, I'm 2 Marines short. I'm going to have to double people up. We don't know how long we're going to be gone. This is going to be a challenge. And then there's a knock on my door. And I look up and there's two young Marines. So I said, enter. And they came right to my desk, perfect 18 inches from the end of my desk. And they reported, sir, Lance Corporal Lamb and Lance Corporal Kashuda reported as ordered. And I thought, oh, at ease, Marines. So you must be the last two that I need for my security platoon. They said, yes, sir. I said, what unit are you from? In perfect unison, they blurted out, we're in the band, sir. I hope some of you are laughing out there, because I know I laughed and I felt bad. They laughed and we kind of had a little chuckle. And I said, Marines, I'm so sorry for laughing, because I know that right here, every Marine is a rifleman. Our Marine Corps ethos, it does not matter. We are trained in combat tactics at every rank and every job. It doesn't matter if you are a cook or a member of the band or aviation command and control like me. We're all trained in the same manner. So then I said, how did you learn about this deployment? So, sir, the band director just got the whole band together and said that there's a classified mission in a classified location. We don't know how long you're going to be gone, but it's of matters of utmost national security. And I said, wow, you must be the only two to volunteer. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They said, no, sir, the whole band volunteered. We're just the lucky two that got picked. So Marines don't cry, but our eyeballs will sweat every once in a while. And as they left, my eyeball sweated a little bit. And I just kind of said a little prayer, just let me bring everybody home safe, because that was moving to me, what they were willing to do for our country. And 8 months comes and goes. We get to know each other very, very well. And I can tell you, all 134 Marines I was privileged to lead and serve had incredible potential. I remember lots of talks with Lance Corporal Kashuda on becoming a Marine Corps officer. He had the right stuff. It was just a natural leader. And I put him in positions that stretched his levels, and he exceeded every single time. I did this with multiple Marines, but I remember Kashuda specifically. Now, at the end of our deployment, 8 months later, there was an editorial comment for our particular deployment. multiple deployments in the area of operations, but General Franks, the CENTCOM commander at the time, only had a comment on one, and that was ours. And it was simply this: flawless execution. Now, going back to Napoleon, that what people will do to earn just something. I remember that I wanted to recognize everybody. And thankfully, we had 4 different organizations that we worked for. I maxed out all of my allocation for every single one of the Marines, whether it was just an a letter of appreciation all the way up to Joint Service Commendation medals. Now, all the other commanders in the region were getting Bronze Stars. So I kind of sat back and I thought, this is awesome. I'm going to get a Bronze Star. I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to have the opportunity to continue to do what I love the most, which is leading Marines. But I never got a single thing. I was the only person on this entire deployment that received no recognition. Now, when I do this talk in person, I ask the crowd, how many people have ever done something that was noteworthy and received 0 recognition for it? And most of the group raises their hands. For those that don't, I say, hey, spoiler alert, it's going to happen. There will be things that you are very proud of that nobody will recognize you for. That's just life. But you have a choice. You can be this guy. You can choose to be bitter. You can choose to dwell in these negative thoughts that will take you into a dark path that has no productivity whatsoever. Bitter. Or what you can do is take that letter I and just chunk it and replace it with the letter E and find ways that you can become better as a result of what you just experienced. Or as Tony Robbins tells us, that whatever we hold in our minds on a consistent basis, that's exactly what we'll experience in our lives. So bitter or better, one letter in the alphabet, but makes an entire world of difference. I love the show, The Christmas Carol, one of my favorite books and movies, to be sure. And we see what bitterness can do. So Ebenezer Scrooge here, he was successful, but he wasn't happy. He was bitter. He was focused on himself. And after the visit from not 3, but 4 ghosts, he learns it's about others. It's about people and relationships and focusing on others. And that helped make him better. Or as I love this Success Race poster, that our attitude will almost always determine our altitude. So as I'm going through this character development arc of recognizing it's not about the medals, it's about the people, but I was still a little bit upset. I did get promoted. I continued to command, but back in my mind, I was still a little bit disappointed. I won't lie. And then I received this email. This email is from Beth Kashuta, Lance Corporal Kashuta's wife. And she's telling me thank you for the time spent mentoring her husband, John Kashuta, who has decided that he wanted to be an officer, and he was accepted, and he was going to Penn State and was going to lead Marines as an officer. When I received this email, honestly, it dropped me like a sack of potatoes, and it flipped everything upside down of what I'd ever thought about success and what success looked like and what it really meant. At this point in my career, once receiving this, no ribbon or medal mattered to me at all. All I wanted to get was more emails like this. This is what became my new passion and purpose. And to go back to answering that question from the beginning, it's all about significance. Significance is far more important than success. And how are we becoming significant in other people's lives? And this is when the invisible medal concept was born. So the picture on the left is my military uniform that sits in the back of my closet, collecting dust. Not sure if I'll ever wear it again. And the reason I put this up here is to just make the point that the visible medals that I once wore on my chest mean nothing compared to the invisible medals that I carry with me in my heart for the people that I know I was able to help them achieve their potential or be significant somehow in their lives. Now, I used to give this talk about just how to earn invisible medals, but then I recognized giving invisible medals is so important, and it's the easiest thing that we can do. I talk about the movie Woodlawn, but for time purposes, I won't go into that. But it's a fantastic movie, and there's one part there at the end when Tony Nathan, this famous running back, calls his former high school football coach to to relish in the moment when he had just won, when the Tony Nathan with the that other school in Northern Alabama, that they won a national championship. He said, Coach, I did this for you. What are you doing these days? He says, well, I'm selling insurance. Tony Nathan says, I don't know about that insurance, but you're the best coach I ever had. And his coach at the time was Bear Bryant. Tandy Geralds was his coach. Auburn graduate, played football at Auburn, in fact, and then was coaching, got into insurance because he just was having trouble finding and reigniting his passion and purpose. But because of that, he went back into coaching. And in 2016, after winning a few high school state championships, he was inducted into the Alabama State Hall of Fame, which is awesome. So I want us to take a few minutes here to just pause and think about who has positively impacted your life. And then send them a text. Send them a text right now and just say, thank you for being significant in my life. And I'm going to tell you, there is power in this. Every single time I give this talk, people share with me, either in person or sharing text like what you see here, of how much of an impact that has on the people who did things for us that were significant. And so we're going to pause for just a couple of minutes. And if you would please do this, who has impacted your life in a significant way? And please text them. All right. I just did the same thing. There's somebody I needed to thank that I hadn't thanked in a while. So I hope everybody had a chance to participate in that. Okay, so let's transition into how do you earn invisible medals? And the way that we earn invisible medals is threefold: meaningful relationships, stewardship, and human potential. So we'll jump into the first one here, meaningful relationships. I think we all remember when we were younger and enjoyed learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I remember thinking to myself, well, what happens when you get to the top of the pyramid? What happens when you have found your purpose, you're self-actualized? Where do you go from there? And it took me a while to realize that you stop looking up and you start looking around. Who do you know, or who are you in contact with that needs some help graduating through these levels of hierarchy that you can bring up to that level of self-actualization, help them find their purpose? At the end of the day, Teddy Roosevelt says, people will not care how much you know until they know how much you care. So caring for others and helping them achieve through those levels of needs up to self-actualization is about building meaningful relationships and earning invisible medals. So I have a little acronym here that I put together, which I call CARE. How do we care? Well, we follow the acronym CARE. Communicate, be available, be respectful, and encourage. And part of communicating is defining reality, but providing hope. The best leaders will define reality. You can't hide from a bad situation, but they'll follow that up very quickly with providing hope. So this is a picture of Colonel Gail Halverson, who served in the military during World War II, Army Air Corps, and then participated in what is known as the Berlin Airlift. For those that know this part in our history, it was right after World War II, the Allied forces, to include the Soviet Union, were basically divvying up sectors in Germany, and the Soviets did not like the idea of the sharing of Berlin. So they created a blockade, and they didn't care if that was going to starve out the population. And so what the Allied forces did is they did the Berlin airlift, where they were flying every 15 seconds. Aircraft were flying into Berlin to drop off supplies, coal, so people wouldn't freeze to death, food, so they wouldn't starve to death. And I had the privilege of meeting Gail Halverson in 2005, and he shared the story that when he had landed his plane and the cargo was being unloaded, he met some children on the fence line who were just, they just had this look of no hope whatsoever on their faces. He wanted to give them something, but all they had was 2 sticks of gum. So he handed that through the fence line, and he watched how these kids shared every that 2 sticks of gum with 10 people. So they split it all up evenly, passed around the wrapper to sniff it. He was moved by the experience. He said, "You know what? I'll be back tomorrow, and I am going to drop candy from my plane, and you'll know it's me because I'm going to wiggle my wings." So his call sign became Uncle Wiggle Wings. Well, this created a movement. When word got back to the States, in fact, it spread all around the entire world. And people were sending candy from all over the place. And they created a operation for this specific event, and it was called Operation Little Vittles. At the end, after 13 months, there were 20 tons of candy that was dropped on with 250,000 parachutes. An unbelievable movement that was created. Now, many years later, Gail had an opportunity to do a reunion in Germany where he met some of these children. And he said, I was so surprised with this big hoopla everybody made about candy. And one of the kids, who was an adult now, just stopped him and said, "Sir, it had nothing to do with candy. What you gave us was hope. You gave us hope." And so hope is such a powerful thing that we can do as leaders to communicate and show that we care. Another one is to be available. I love this quote by Henry Nouwen, the priest and an author. It's when he says that I've always been complaining that my work was constantly interrupted until I realized that the interruptions were my work. In other words, it's the people that are the most important. When somebody comes into your office, whatever you are working on right now becomes secondary to whatever their need is. They're coming to you for a reason because they want to be mentored. They want to talk to you. They have a question. People are not interruptions. People are our work. And then being respectful. During the space race, when President Kennedy wanted to put a man on the moon, he visited NASA pretty regularly. And during one of his first visits, after receiving a briefing, he stepped out into the hallway where there was another gentleman. He didn't know what he was doing. So the president said, "Hey, what do you do here at NASA?" Well, the person he was talking to happened to be a janitor. Did the janitor say, "Well, I'm just a janitor"? No. He looked the president straight in the eyes and said, "Mr. President, I'm a member of the team that's going to put the first man on the moon. That's what I do here." It's all about being respectful. NASA had it right. They knew that every human is an integral piece of our organization's beautiful mosaic. One missing piece disrupts the entire work. So being respectful to everybody, no matter what their roles are. And then, as Eleanor Roosevelt says, it's about encouraging. A good leader is going to inspire people to have confidence in the leader, but a great leader will inspire people to have confidence in themselves. And that's what encouraging is all about. As Maya Angelou stated, that she learned that people will forget what you say or what you did, but they will never forget the way that you made them feel. And that's all about building meaningful relationships. How are we making other people feel? We make them feel good by showing that we care. All right, that's number one. That's the longest one, okay? Number two is stewardship. In every one of my change of commands, both of the incoming and outgoing commander would talk about stewardship. In fact, we would call it the stewardship of command, recognizing that we are holding something of sacred trust for a finite period of time. In the Marine Corps, it's 18 to 24 months. That's all you get. And that's not a lot of time when you think about it to make a difference, to be significant in people's lives and their families. And I got to thinking, now that I've been retired for a while, isn't life really a stewardship? Whether we live for 20, 40, 80 years, that's finite. It's not a lot of time when you think about it. And what are we doing for those that are going to come after us? How are we viewing life as a stewardship? And a famous Greek proverb states that a society will grow great when old men plant trees whose shade they'll never sit in. They're not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about the future, life as a stewardship. I want to introduce you to Jack Lucas. Jack Lucas was 14 years old when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Some of you probably have children that are that age, so think about it. 14 years old. At the time, you could enlist in the military if you were 17 years old, no younger than the age of 17, but that required a parental endorsement. So a parent had to sign to allow you to serve before the age of 18. Jack Lucas, at the age of 14, forged his mother's signature so he could enlist in the United States Marine Corps. A year later, the Marine Corps found out, but at that point, he was already in and he was serving. He was actually really good at what he was doing. And he was in Hawaii, and they had him driving trucks, if you could believe that. 14, but over 15 years old at this point now. And so they let him drive supply trucks in Hawaii. Wasn't good enough for him. He stowed away on a ship, which unbeknownst to him was bound for Iwo Jima. So he turned 17 years old on board that ship, and 6 days later was on the Battle of Iwo Jima. At one point, he was in a foxhole when 2 enemy grenades fell into the foxhole. Without hesitation, he dove on both of those grenades, shoved them into the volcanic sand, but blew him back several feet. He had over 200 pieces of shrapnel in his body, and somehow he miraculously survived. But in so doing, he saved the lives of the 3 Marines that were in the foxhole with him. It's stewardship. In 2010, I had the privilege to be deployed on board the USS Iwo Jima down in South America. And I was so excited near the end of our deployment because it was November 10th, Marine Corps' birthday. And I had this awesome speech prepared about Cuba, which was off in the distance, and Cusco Wells, where we had 2 Marines earn the Medal of Honor. And I was walking down the passageway, a Navy chief officer stopped me, and he showed me a coin that said Jack Lucas. And then he shared with me that Jack Lucas was his grandfather-in-law, which I thought was incredible. I said, who knows that on this ship? Well, nobody. I'm a private kind of guy. I don't want anybody to know, which I just thought that's insane, you know. And she says, but I want to tell you something that only the family knows. And that something is that when the ship was being constructed, Jack Lucas was allowed to go on that ship multiple times. The last time before the ship was to be sealed permanently, before it became seaworthy, he went into the hull of the ship by himself. He had his Medal of Honor with him, and he left it inside that ship, where it is to this very day. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is an incredible story. And this fantastic speech that I had prepared for tomorrow is going in the trash. I want you on the front row. We're going to share this story. And we did. And it was a legacy about somebody who lived life as a stewardship and left something behind that we all admire. His tombstone in Arlington simply says this: what we have done for ourselves dies with us, but what we have done for others remains and is immortal. All right, that's 2. The third one is human potential. Every human born on this planet has one thing in common, and that is potential. The difference is who comes into their lives, mentors, family members, friends, colleagues, to help them achieve that potential. And it's so important for us in our everyday lives to recognize that we have the opportunity to either help mentor or to yell and be mean. Okay. I mean, that's basically what this picture is here from Saturday Evening Post, 1954. And we think, I bet you we've all been here before. We have a boss that yells at us and we take those negative feelings home with us to our families. And that's kind of what this picture describes. How about we flip that script? And instead of the negativity, let's flip that and have an opportunity to mentor or train or develop and create positive ripples instead. In terms of recognizing potential, when Thomas Edison was 8 years old, he was sent home from school. The principal told his mother that he is addled. In other words, he cannot be trained and he's wasting our time. The mom didn't even try to have him go back to that school. She took him out and she homeschooled him. We're talking 1854. And most of Thomas Edison's childhood was spent being homeschooled by his mom. That teacher missed a golden opportunity to see the potential in Thomas Edison. He failed to see it. His mom did. And he's eternally grateful to what she did for him. And thankfully, what we have now, maybe candles might be illuminating my office right now instead of electricity, but one of the greatest inventors in modern times. So most human beings, they want to matter, they want to be seen, they want to be heard and appreciated. They desire to serve a cause bigger than themselves. They want meaningful relationships, and they certainly want to be developed to their full potential. How do we help? Well, we help by being significant and earning invisible medals. As Winston Churchill stated, we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. I have a video here I want to share with you. It's just a couple of minutes. But this is a person who may not be successful, but he is incredibly significant. All right, here we go.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวันเขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลยไม่ได้รวยขึ้นไม่ได้ออกทีวีไม่มีใครรู้จักไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้นเพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึกได้เห็นความสุขได้เข้าใจได้ความรักได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิมในชีวิตคุณอะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
ไทยประกันชีวิตเชื่อในความดี
That gets me every time. And my eyeballs do sweat every single time I see that. Maybe some of your eyeballs are sweating right now as well. But I'll tell you, being significant in people's lives changes lives and changes the world, in my opinion. Now, these are two of my favorite characters in history. It's Aristotle and Alexander the Great. And at one point, Aristotle asked Alexander the Great, how many is one? How many is one? He came back the next day and said, I have my answer. One can be a great many. Now, he was referring to leadership and the things that he was doing with the conquest of Persia, but I want to kind of flip that into today's context and really ask your help on something here. And that is to be significant to one person a month. That's it, just one person a month. And it doesn't have to be somebody that you have a relationship with either. It could be somebody you see out in town having a bad day, just acknowledging them and engaging with them, even ever so briefly. Because as you saw in that video, we do that for others, they do that for others. And it just kind of grows exponentially. And to demonstrate that, if we can just have 100 people focus on being significant to one person a month, and then those people do the same, and that cycle repeats itself for 3 years, just 36 months. Look what happens in year 3. We have impacted over 200,000 lives just by trying to be significant in their lives, which is the way to earn invisible medals, by the way. To put that into context, that is 2 Jordan-Hare stadiums filled to capacity and 3 Neville arenas filled to capacity with still people standing outside tailgating. That's significant. That makes a huge difference. And I would love for you to join me on this journey and this purpose. As we're wrapping up here, if you loved everything that you heard, there's other opportunities to go out there. This is just chapter 1, and more opportunities out there if you liked what you heard. And that brings us to the end. I wanted to wrap things up a little bit early to give us an opportunity for some Q&A. And so thank you for all 51 of you that stayed online and listened for the last 40 minutes or so. I wish you all the best on this wonderful tax day. Semper Fi and War Eagle.
Chris, that was absolutely incredible, and we so appreciate your time. You know, in thinking back over, gosh, I don't know how many of these I've participated in, I think you may have reached the pinnacle. Because of what you said, but because of how you said it, but because also your eyeballs sweat a little bit. And that's the kind of passion that I think people really want to reach out in their lives. So let me come back and first of all, let me encourage people. If you haven't looked for this yet, you got to look for it. It's something that is a pretty simple guide. It really is, but I think it could be meaningful. I want you to tell us about some of the deeper things that you touched on, but maybe didn't really dig into a lot. How difficult was it for you to connect your passion and your purpose? I'm assuming when you left the Marines, that was a major point in your life.
Oh man, yeah, that was a challenge because I mean, for me, it was 4 years at Auburn and then 30 years active duty. So really, my entire adult life since I was 18 years old was all about serving my country and loving what I did. And there was a deep purpose and passion with all of that. So then you retire and that's over. That part of your life is kind of taken away. So now what? And I won't lie. I mean, like everybody who undergoes that, it's a challenge to figure out, well, what's next? How am I going to find something to fill that void? Now, obviously, my family filled it very, very well because it was a chance at a time to do things that I didn't have an opportunity to do over my active duty service. But I always wanted to come back to Auburn, and we were actually living here while I was stationed at the Air War College. But I just wanted to give back, honestly. And it started by answering an email to be a mentor with Harvard Connects. And that just got me to really recognizing that it's all about giving back to the next generation of leaders and people. And had an opportunity then to start teaching part-time leadership to graduating seniors. And then I was very fortunate to be picked up here at Human Resources, where I get to do human resource development, which is all about employee development, leadership development, performance development. We don't call it performance management anymore. And so I found I'm blessed, honestly, and very fortunate to have found a deep purpose, which is still fulfilling my passion of leading people. So I almost settled for something up in Huntsville and down at Eglin. And my wife gave me some great advice and said, don't settle for something that won't make you happy. Find your purpose. And I did. And I just love being here. Thank you.
I have to tell you, my father was a Marine, and he always said, "You may do something else, but you'll always be a Marine."
Hoorah. That's a fact. That's a true statement.
So Marines do tough things. What's the worst that you can do when you're in that kind of a position? When you're at the point, the passion and the purpose just don't seem to be coming together. What's the worst thing you could do?
I think we live in harmony, honestly, when we have a set of core values that we live by, and we are deep through reflection, we're deeply in touch with what we know we are the most passionate about, and where can we make a difference. That's where purpose comes into play. Where can we kind of channel that passion with our personal values and make a purpose, or live our purpose? And that is through what is our profession, right? And so I do have this conversation often with those that are the students are about to graduate, that look, you do not settle for a job that you know is not going to allow you to connect your passion to a sense of purpose, where you are making a difference, you're serving something greater than yourself. And for me, had I not taken my wife's advice and settled for something that didn't really connect with my purpose, I would not be a very happy individual right now. So I'm glad that I waited, and I'm glad that it was nerve wracking. It took 10 weeks. I mean, I'm telling you, it was very nerve wracking and terrifying, quite frankly, but having that faith and patience and perseverance to wait until I found something that was going to allow me to connect my passion to my purpose and be fulfilled was a game changer. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, you did, and I'd like to take it a step farther. There are some folks who right now might be feeling, gosh, I've waited 10 weeks, I've waited 20 weeks, I've sent out 50 applications, I've done all the things that society tells us are necessary to get started on that next journey, and it just doesn't seem to be connecting yet. Now, you're someone who's been through that. You've felt the stress of some stressful times. What do you do? How do you encourage people to keep going?
Yeah. So I'll share a story then with you. When we were deployed, and we thought it was going to be a 4-month deployment. That ended up taking it on to 5 months, and then 6 months, and then 7 months. And I had 135 Marines. This is the deployment the story I started with earlier, and things got pretty rough for a while. We kind of felt like we're not ever going to get out of here. We're stuck. It's never going to end. Like Hotel California, right? And you just have to be in tune with that and recognize what people are going through. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, we're shutting down operations, and I had an all hands formation. And I talked about my grandfather, and I talked about World War II, and I talked about when people went off to war, they didn't say, "I'll see you in 6 months." They said, "I'll see you when the war is over." We are going to get through it. I even quoted Thomas Paine, and these are the times that try men's soul, and the summer soldier and the sun-signed patriot will shrink in the service of their nation. And the quote. And that kind of got us through it. And then eventually we were replaced by another unit and got back home. But I guess to answer your questions, first you got to recognize it. You cannot. You've got to be in tune with what people are going through and experiencing, and you can't ignore it. Just like that quote, which is a Napoleon quote, by the way: "Define reality, provide hope." So I defined reality, I provided hope, and it was a swift kick in the butt that if anybody wanted to continue to complain and not want to be a part of our team, I will make sure that you're on the next plane home and you'll go home in disgrace and not with honor. And that was the end of it. Everybody was motivated, and we got through it. That's just one. There was a lot of others, but that's just one that pops into my head.
So, Colonel Ritchie, we're about to deploy, we're about to break up, we're about to go on to other things for the day. You've got one last chance to give us that message that's either the gentle or the swift kick in the butt. Send us off the bell.
Well, it'll be gentle for sure. What can we do today? Well, it's tax day, so hopefully y'all are getting a big refund, But how about this? When we go into our offices, let's all make an effort to just try to encourage somebody. Find somebody, give them a little word of thanks, appreciation, and encouragement on whatever it is that they're doing. And we don't do enough of that. Honestly, we don't recognize humans for what humans do, especially spending time with in their profession. So find somebody to uplift. It's in Proverbs, when you refresh others, you refresh yourself. So you will be refreshed if you refresh another human. And I would say let's do so by recognizing them, thanking them for what they do, and encouraging them in some way. Maybe that'll do it. And I want to say also, I wish I could respond to so many of these comments in here, but it looks like it's turned off where I can't give any emojis. But I've read everything that you all have posted in here, and I just want to say thank you. I'm very humbled by your comments, and I appreciate all of you for spending our time with here and not getting bored and jumping off. So thank you, everybody.
Very good, Chris. Thank you very much. We hope you come back.
Oh, I'd love to.
As a reminder, today's session will be available online this afternoon. We'll be sending you that link by email. You'll also find a survey link in that email, and we'd appreciate your feedback on today's program. Join us again next month for EagleCast, a production of the Office of Professional and Continuing Education at Auburn University.